What if behind the powerful sermons and unshakable faith, one of gospel's most revered icons was silently fighting a battle no one saw coming? In a move that sent shockwaves through the church community, Bishop T.D. Jakes has finally broken his silence about the hidden struggles of Bishop G. E. Patterson, struggles that were carefully kept from the public eye for years. What he revealed isn't just emotional, it's explosive. A revelation so raw and unexpected, it forces us to rethink everything we thought we knew about legacy, leadership, and the true cost of spiritual greatness. This is the story they hoped would stay buried. But today, the truth comes to light. Stay with us, because what you're about to hear will shift your entire understanding of gospel history. Welcome back. Today, we're peeling back the curtain on a powerful and long-silenced truth, one that echoes through the very foundation of the Black Church. In a moment of raw honesty, Bishop T.D. Jakes has revealed the hidden struggles of the late Bishop G. E. Patterson, struggles that were quietly endured behind the pulpit, away from the adoring crowds and televised sermons. For years, these whispers floated through church halls, but no one dared speak them aloud, until now. Bishop Jakes' emotional confession doesn't just reveal a man battling private storms, it forces us to confront the high cost of spiritual leadership, the pressure to appear invincible, and the silence that often surrounds suffering in ministry. In this video, we uncover never-before-heard details of Patterson's journey, the impact those hidden battles had on his ministry, and the reason Jakes now says, "We all knew, but few spoke up." What follows may just redefine how we remember a gospel giant. What were those hidden battles? How deeply did they scar one of the most revered gospel leaders of our time? And what can we, followers, believers, and leaders, learn from this rare and emotional revelation? Stay with us until the very end, because the truth that unfolds in this story will not only shake your perception of gospel leadership but also expose the heavy burden that often comes with the spotlight. Bishop G. E. Patterson wasn't just a preacher, he was a spiritual force. A man whose voice could stir souls and whose presence commanded reverence across the world of Pentecostalism. Yet beneath the surface of his public triumphs was a personal war that few ever saw. Behind the anointing, behind the pulpit, behind the perfect image, there were silent struggles, unspoken fears, and internal battles that threatened to break even the strongest foundation. Bishop Patterson's life was a masterclass in faith, but it was also a hidden testimony of endurance through suffering. As we explore what Bishop T.D. Jakes revealed, we're pulling back the curtain on the price of greatness, the human side of holiness, and why true strength is sometimes found not in the moments we speak, but in the battles we survive silently. This is more than a tribute, it's a reckoning. It was intricately entwined with personal hardships and difficulties that few people outside of his immediate group ever witnessed or discussed. A fellow titan in the gospel community, T.D. Jakes, recently talked candidly about these personal struggles. Jakes claims that Patterson was subject to pressures outside of the pulpit. Health issues, disputes over leadership, and spiritual warfare put his faith to the test every day. It was a number of difficulties that grew worse over time rather than a single problem. While the public witnessed triumph and power, Bishop Jakes said there was a hidden narrative of suffering and perseverance. And many people are unaware of this. Even at great personal expense, Patterson's family and close friends frequently had to negotiate these rough seas in silence while upholding the man's dignity and privacy. It's amazing how, in spite of the conflicts going on behind the scenes, Patterson's public ministry appeared unaffected, even victorious. However, what precisely were these conflicts? What effect did they have on the man who developed into a spiritual giant? Keep reading because the details that many people believed would never be revealed are revealed in the next part. Bishop T.D. The recent remarks made by Jakes were not superficial. When he said, "We all knew," they revealed layers of a story that had been hidden for a long time. It wasn't a generalization. Even though Patterson's troubles were never publicly addressed, it was a clue to the fact that insiders in the gospel community were aware of them. What were these private conflicts, then? First, health issues were a major factor. Despite his outward display of strength, Bishop Patterson struggled with severe health conditions that impacted his daily life and work. There was a huge physical toll. However, Patterson tended to bear the burden in silence rather than discuss it publicly. Second, there were disputes among the church's leaders. Because of his strong presence and unwavering vision, Patterson occasionally found himself in odds with other ministry leaders. There was an undertone of pressure that few outsiders noticed as tensions developed over decisions, church governance, and spiritual direction. The third, and possibly most significant, was the spiritual conflict Patterson faced. Patterson suffered tremendous spiritual warfare, which Bishop Jake described as constant assaults on his faith and calling. This was more than simply a metaphor. Throughout his work, Patterson had times of extreme personal adversity that tested his fortitude and dependence on God. This revelation humanizes a man who many people thought was larger than life, which is what makes it so potent. Like everyone else, Bishop Patterson was no stranger to suffering, uncertainty, and hardship. They don't want you to know the surprising part, though. In spite of these covert conflicts, Patterson's power remained constant. His sermons were still motivating. His legacy merely got stronger, and his music kept getting better. Nevertheless, the public narrative was one of unwavering power for decades. The truth was handled with care. What impact did Patterson's ministry and family suffer as a result of keeping these difficulties secret? And why did Bishop T.D. Jake wait so long to say what so many others already knew but had never said? Every great leader has a family behind them. And for G. E. Patterson, Bishop, few realized the weight his family carried. We were all aware of Bishop T.D. Jakes' disclosure, which alluded to Patterson's personal hardships as well as the silent weight his loved ones carried during his ministry. Imagine belonging to a family that exclusively displays success and glory to the outside world. However, behind closed doors, you see anguish, tiredness, and unsaid struggles. Patterson's close associates, wife, and kids were frequently torn between two realities. Supporting a man who is admired by millions of people while battling the truth of his unspoken struggles. According to family sources, Patterson's health problems occasionally compelled him to postpone or reschedule engagements, leaving his team in a bind. However, in order to preserve the appearance of unflinching fortitude and divine calling, these instances were kept out of the public sight. Furthermore, Bishop Jake pointed out that the conflicts among the leadership went beyond matters of church direction or policy. There were emotional repercussions. These inner battles occasionally overflowed into family life, resulting in tension and strained bonds that were impossible to publicly express. According to one insider, they had to keep everything under wraps because if anything were to emerge, it might harm not only Patterson's reputation but the church's position as a whole. The pressure was tremendous. Although it preserved the ministry's reputation, this culture of silence came at a personal price. In his recent remarks, Bishop Jake himself considered this, highlighting how the church community frequently ignores the human side of spiritual leaders, their weaknesses, anxieties, and need for assistance. He stated, "We must stop pretending that our leaders are invincible." Yes, G. Patterson was a giant, but he was also a man in need of prayer, grace, and understanding. Leaders like Patterson who conceal their difficulties not only harm themselves but also create irrational expectations for the entire religious community, which is why this demand for openness and compassion is so important. And this is a question that has been on a lot of people's thoughts. If the church had been more transparent and supportive, may these covert conflicts have been avoided or at least lessened? The following part explores why Bishop T.D. Jakes thinks that openly addressing these covert conflicts is crucial for the future of gospel leadership and how Patterson's tale can be a potent lesson for everyone. Bishop T.D. Jakes' recent disclosures regarding Bishop G. Patterson's personal conflicts were more than a thought exercise. For the whole gospel community, they were a potent call to action. In his moving remarks, Bishop Jakes underlined the importance of ending the taboo around the hardships that many spiritual leaders face but rarely acknowledge in public. He exhorted the church to embrace openness as a means of healing and genuine leadership, rather than as a sign of weakness. Jake said, "All too frequently, our leaders believe they have to put on a front of perfection. They become estranged from God, their families, and their congregations because of that mask. He went on to consider Patterson's legacy, stating that although he was a tower of strength, this strength had been developed via great adversity, much of which was hidden from outsiders. According to Bishop Jake, church congregations may become more empathetic and supportive if they comprehend this human aspect of leadership. This viewpoint is particularly pertinent in the current environment, where constraints on religious leaders are increased by social media and public scrutiny. Expectations for leaders extend beyond spiritual direction. They are public personalities, motivational speakers, and cultural icons who have to handle harsh criticism while upholding their ministries. Bishop Jake's call calls into question these unattainable norms and exhorts the church to foster cultures in which leaders can be open and vulnerable without worrying about criticism or losing their respect. We need to create a culture where it's acceptable to say, "I'm struggling," and get support, rather than silence or shame, he said. Furthermore, Patterson's tale serves as a reminder that hardship and faith can coexist. Being perfect isn't the story of gospel leadership. It's about having the fortitude to keep going in the face of adversity, grace, and perseverance. Bishop Jake additionally pointed out that the church's failure to openly deal with these battles can have wider repercussions consisting of burnout, fractured ministries, and a disconnect between leaders and their followers. He pressured that transparency would not diminish authority, however enhances it by means of constructing accept as true with and authenticity. And here's wherein it receives even greater compelling. Bishop Jake hinted that there are greater memories like Patterson's hidden struggles within distinguished ministries that the general public has but to pay attention. However, it's time to convey those stories to mild. Now not to tear down, but to lift up and heal. This units the stage for a larger communication approximately gospel management, intellectual health, and the tradition of silence that often surrounds it. As we reach the very last chapter of this profound story, it is vital to reflect no longer simply on the struggles Bishop G. Patterson confronted, but on the legacy he left at the back of and what Bishop T.D. Jake's candid revelations mean for gospel management shifting forward. Bishop Patterson's impact is undeniable. From his unforgettable sermons to his powerful recordings, his voice formed the faith journeys of infinite believers round the world. Yet, what Bishop Jake's feedback have reminded us is that this legacy turned into built on a foundation of now not simplest non-secular power, however additionally human vulnerability. The query now will become, how can Patterson's tale remodel the manner the church supports its leaders? Bishop Jake demanding situations us to rethink the conventional expectations placed on non-secular figures. This culture of silence often ends in isolation and burnout, robbing leaders of the assist they desperately want. However, Patterson's story breaks that mildew. His private battles, now mentioned brazenly, serve as a powerful testament to the resilience and humanity behind the pulpit. Bishop Jake emphasizes that recognizing and addressing those struggles is essential for growing healthier ministries. He advocates for intentional areas wherein leaders are searching for assist without fear of judgment or reprisal, where intellectual fitness, non-secular nicely being, and personal demanding situations are addressed as overtly as sermons and baptisms. Furthermore, this transparency can ripple for the duration of the congregation. When leaders version vulnerability, it encourages fans to include their personal struggles with honesty and religion. It dismantles the stigma around ache and failure and invitations a greater compassionate, true community. This is the future Bishop Jake envisions, a church wherein faith leaders and followers alike can be actual, supported, and empowered. It's also a call to the church at large to take into account that behind every sermon, each song, and each ministry, there is someone with a tale. Sometimes marked by way of worry, but always packed with desire. In ultimate, Bishop Jake's revelation approximately G. Patterson isn't always just a disclosure, it's a AA00333992A1424449A0372560BF2. It demanding situations us to honor the full humanity of our leaders, to foster grace in the church, and to construct legacies now not simply on power, but on reality. Because in fact lies recovery. And in recovery lies the electricity to transport ahead more potent than ever. And here is a question for you, the viewer. How do you experience approximately the pressures located on non-secular leaders? Should the church do extra to support them? Drop your mind in the comments below. If you observed this video I establishing, recollect to hit that like button, subscribe for extra deep dives into gospel tales, and share this with buddies who want to pay attention this message. Thanks for looking, and bear in mind each leader is human and their memories depend.